Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the Ages of Chaos. Welcome back to this little series of appendix videos for Codex Chaos Space Marines 9.0. Now, today we're going to be looking at one that I've saved for towards the end because they are one of my absolute favourite legions. They always have been. The Word Bearers. Way back when I first started in the hobby, when the second ed Chaos Codex, and it was just back then, just the Chaos Codex. It wasn't Chaos Space Marines, it wasn't Chaos Demons, it wasn't Chaos Cults. It was everything all rolled together in one massive, all singing, all dancing codex. That was when the Word Bearers? I don't know. That's not good, is it? Word Bearers were properly fleshed out. They were mentioned before in the Realms of Chaos book, like the Night Lords and the Alpha Legion and the Iron Warriors, but they didn't really have much going for them. They were very loosely categorized as followers of Khorne back then, and there was nothing to them. There was just a banner on one of the artwork pages and their name, the Word Bearers, and a symbol that would... It has been adapted into their pre-Heresy Legion symbol a little further down the line. It was back then. It was an open book with a demonic worm eating its way through it. That was adapted later on. I believe around the time that the Horus Heresy books were first being written and published, and you were getting like the 30k models from Forge World. So it was adapted to be the original Legion symbol, which was an open book with a flame in it. It's not that anymore, although some of the chapters of the Word Bearers do still sport like a stylized version of that. The Word Bearers had their full background detailed in the second ed Chaos Codex, where they were detailed as being almost like the archetypal Chaos Space Marines, almost like Chaos Space Marines were described back in the Realms of Chaos days, when their only real motivation was worship of the Chaos powers. These guys they're the Chaos equivalents of Black Templars, effectively. They are the ecclesiarchy of Chaos. They are the most faithful, the most wholly dedicated to chaos as a religion, as a metaphysical concept. They devote themselves utterly to the principles and the metaphysics of chaos. They believe that chaos, the war, demons, and the gods of chaos are truly divine, that they are the ultimate expressions of divinity in this universe, and every waking moment is dedicated to bringing about the ultimate victory of chaos. That's how they were characterized back then. They had no real motivation of their own as such. They were just religious fanatics, zealots, and fundamentalists. They were the ones who first started worshipping chaos way back when, even before Horus knew what chaos was, even before Horus fell. It was the Word Bearers that were the first legion to fall. The reason being, back then they were the loose background, because although they had background back then, it was much more general and much more sort of vague than it became, certainly in the Horus Heresy books. Back then, the background described that Lorgar was ultimately censured by the Emperor for wasting time. Effectively, he spent far too much time building temples and preaching on the worlds that he conquered, rather than doing what the Space Marines were meant to do, which is fighting. This was before, of course, the notion that the Great Crusade was a secularist project and that the Emperor defied his own divinity. That wasn't a thing back then. The Emperor was quite happy back then to be known as a god. It's just that the Space Marines weren't meant to, they weren't designed or made to waste time preaching and building temples and whatnot. They were supposed to fight and conquer and suppress. That's what they were made for. So Lorgar apparently had a bit of a hissy fit at that, was very unhappy, and would eventually find substitutes for his need for worship in the Chaos Powers, beings that genuinely desired to be worshipped and actually provided tangible rewards for that worship. So he ultimately turned, and even before Horus fell, started a kind of underground movement of corrupting the worlds that the word bearers conquered from within, spreading the worship and the various churches of chaos that of course eventually erupted during the Horus Heresy. Now the Horus Heresy books changed that quite a bit. I mean, the general gist is still true, but the Horus Heresy books involving the word bearers really shifted that around quite significantly. In those books, and the books you really want to read when it comes to the word bearers, certainly the first few, so Horus Rising, False Gods, etc., you want to read them because that's where you start to see what the word bearers are actually doing and how they are ultimately responsible for the heresy itself. The whole heresy is the design of the word bearers. It's what they intend, and of course they win. It's what actually happens. Everything that happens in the heresy is by their design, and the 10,000 years of warfare and chaos and insanity that follow, all of that is as intended. That is what was meant to happen. If there are winners of the Horus Heresy, it's the word bearers. They get exactly what they want. And the current status quo, where you've got the Cicatrix Maledictum, you've got demons spilling into reality, you've got the true messiah of chaos in Abaddon carving a swathe throughout creation, you've got the demon primarchs and the cult legions dedicated to each one of the patron powers. That's what the word bearers wanted. That's what they intended, and they got it. They win. The word bearers are the winners, and that's kind of the end of it. In the Horus Heresy books, what happens is, because the Great Crusade and the Emperor were rewritten by Dan Abnett and the other writers in the Horus Heresy series, so that the Emperor was ultimately a secularist, and his design was intended to spread a philosophy and an ideology of atheism, I suppose, across the universe, so that the warp would be becalmed and the chaos powers would eventually die out. That was his intention. Lorgar worshipping him as a god and demonstrating religious characteristics was totally against everything the Emperor wanted, everything the Great Crusade was designed to promote. So he had to stop that. He had to put a stop to that. However, the way he went about it was arguably a very, very, very bad idea indeed, because all it ultimately did was drive Lorgar deeper into extremism and despair and open him up to the influence of chaos. The way he does it in the fantastic Horus Heresy book, The First Heretic, by Aaron Dembski Bowden, is by sending the Ultramarines to destroy the first city created and settled by the word bearers, the city of Monarchia, which is the seat of their power and the culture that they want to see spread throughout humanity. And they do it by raining apocalypse down upon it. It is an insult to the word bearers legion. It's a shame to them, and it's designed to humble them. It's designed to make the Emperor's position on Lorgar's theistic inclinations plain. However, of course, it does exactly the opposite. After that event, the word bearers just stop. They stop doing anything. Their whole fleet is becalmed for quite a while. I think it's like a number of Terran months. They don't do anything. So they're on the very edge of being censored again. But certain influences within the word bearers that already serve the chaos powers they actually start to turn Lorgar very subtly. There are two in particular, but there's actually already a rot within the Legion from the old faiths of Colchis, which is the world that the word bearers originate from. Before the Emperor came, they worshipped an old faith, which was essentially a kind of pantheistic religion, which ultimately is a veil for chaos worship. The two men responsible for finding and raising Lorgar within the faith of Colchis, Erebus and Cor Phaeron, they start to turn Lorgar to the worship of chaos. And in that interest, I mean, Lorgar's not a fool, he's not a dupe. They believe that he is. They kind of regard Lorgar as a tool, but he's not. He's a Primarch. He's far more intelligent than they are. So his attitude is, all right, let's go and see. You claim that there is power in this universe, that there is genuine metaphysics in this universe that can give us meaning, that can give humanity meaning. So he's like, all right, take me to it then. Let me see it. And that's exactly what they do. They guide him to the Eye of Terror, to the great warp storm that was opened up when the Eldari civilization fell during the birth of Slaanesh. And Lorgar, not only does he personally commune with the warp itself, he sends some of his sons on a crusade into the Eye of Terror, and they come back with not only word of the powers that exist within the warp, but they themselves are possessed. They themselves have bonded with demons and have become the very first possessed of the Legion. Some of the most interesting characters come out of that process, of that union, like Argel Tal, for example, one of the best characters in the Horus Heresy. As a result of that, Lorgar himself ventures into the Eye of Terror. He's guided by one of the Davinite priests. Davin is a world that, or rather it's a system of worlds, where chaos worship is de rigueur, and they have been in contact with Cor Phaeron and Erebus almost from the very beginning. But Lorgar himself ventures into the Eye of Terror. And what I love about the way Aaron Dembski Bowden writes Lorgar is that he's not an idiot. He's not a zealot. He's not a dupe. He's not a fool. And he is very, very suspicious of these powers and of these gods, even when they make themselves plain, even when he encounters demons and greater demons and magic and all of this stuff. He's still like, okay, fair enough. That's all very impressive, but why should I worship that? You've got to do better than that. There's a great sequence where he fights Kabanda, the chief of the Bloodthirsters, and he beats the shit out of Kabanda. And he says to Kabanda, sorry, the Blood God is going to have to do a lot better than that if he wants my worship. Eventually, though, Lorgar, he accepts the powers of chaos. It's a really interesting dynamic the early word bearers have with chaos. They're not as fanatically worshipful of it as they would later become. They accept it. They see it for what it is, as the true metaphysics of this universe that humanity has created for itself. The gods are ultimately reflections of humanity and the sentient species in the universe, and Lorgar and the word bearers see the potential in that. And that's why they embark upon their crusade to convert the other legions, to initiate the Horus Heresy, and to usher in what they consider to be a new era of enlightenment. That's what they genuinely believe, that chaos is the way forward. And they become the ultimate esoterists and occultists of the legions. They start to spread very subtly, for the most part, the warrior lodges, the cults, and the different churches and chapters, not only through their own legion, but through other legions as well. A lot of them become sorcerers, like Erebus, for example. He not only becomes like the chief dark apostle, but he has nascent psychic powers and things like that. Lorgar himself transcends ultimately both Cor Phaeron and Erebus. He comes to understand the nature of chaos and the nature of the gods and of the warp far more deeply than they do, because of course he's connected to it. The Primarchs were partially created from the power of chaos. That's made plain in the Horus Heresy books. The Emperor, when he created the Primarchs, did make a deal with the Chaos powers, and part of the Chaos powers' raw energy and influence is in the Primarch. So he is attuned to the warp in a way that none of his sons actually are. And in the first Heretic and in the book Betrayer that follows it, he starts to perceive the warp as music, as the music of the spheres, and he himself, he considers to be the conductor of it, the maestro of the warp. And that's what he starts to do. He starts to spin the skeins of fate and of probability that seep out of the warp into the material universe. It's a brilliant, brilliant concept. And that's what the word bearers define themselves as. They are the hands of divinity at large in reality. They believe that chaos is the true metaphysics, and they're not necessarily wrong in that. It's terrible, it's awful and extreme, but what does that matter? It's the truth, and that's what they're about spreading. So in the present day, they have become this evangelical movement. They operate out of a demon world called Sicarius, which is just a gigantic, seething temple world to chaos. And Lorgar himself hasn't been seen for 10,000 years. He eventually, after the heresy, he retreated to a reclusiam on Sicarius, and to commune more deeply with the powers of chaos and to sort of channel the music of the warp out into the material universe. He hasn't been seen since then, only by one or two very powerful entities. He opened the doors of his reclusium to Abaddon, and nobody really knows what happened between him and Abaddon in there. But after that, the word bearers fell in line with Abaddon's Black Crusade, so you can sort of guess. Also, he ascended to demonhood. He is one of the demon primarchs and one of the very, very, very few demons that has the patronage of all of the Chaos powers. Alongside Be'lakor and Perturabo, he's one of the only ones who wasn't ascended from just one of the Chaos powers. Since then, he hasn't been seen, but the word bearers have spread out across creation. They conduct their religious wars, not only throughout the Eye of Terror, across the Cicatrix Maledictum, but also throughout the material universe as well. Of course, they tend to target Shrine Worlds, so they dislike the Ecclesiarchy quite intensely, and they attack Shrine Worlds, and they establish their own monuments to chaos on those worlds. They tend to invoke quite a lot of demons during their attacks, and they deliberately collapse worlds into warp storms to bring about paradises of chaos. That is their entire endeavor. They want to bring chaos itself to the material universe and to lead humanity from their own terms into a new state of chaotic enlightenment. It's kind of cool. I love them. They've got great aesthetics, you know, they're all papal and chaotic and mutated. They've got a great ideology. I really, really like the word bearers. They are definitely one of my favorites. In terms of, I mean, if I were going to do one of the undivided legions, it would undoubtedly be one of the cults of the word bearers. There's no doubt in my mind, because I love them. Now, in terms of the way they're represented in the new Chaos Codex, like all of them, they're damn good. They're damn good. In fact, I would say they're probably one of the stronger, certainly one of the stronger in terms of their Legion trait. Their Legion trait is Profane Zeal. The word bearers march to war for the glory of the Chaos Pantheon, stirred into a rapturous state of fanaticism by promises of unholy power in return for the offering of battlefield sacrifices. So first part, each time a model with this trait makes a melee attack, if the model's unit made a charge move, was charged, or performed a heroic intervention with this turn, you can re-roll that attack's hit roll. Really useful, cheap and cheerful, universal application. You're always going to get use out of that. It means that they are not going to miss very much in close combat. Very, very, very good. The more interesting one is the next part. Each time a model with this trait would lose a wound as a result of a mortal wound, roll 1d6. On a 5+, that wound is not lost. That is very rare. It's incredibly rare for any army to have defense against mortal wounds, let alone for pretty much the entire army to have defense against mortal wounds. That is brilliant. That is pretty amazing, to be honest. It's very unusual, but it will have application, and it could mean the difference between a key unit being destroyed and not. Very, very, very nice indeed. They have a secondary objective, of course, which is exalt the dark gods. Lorgar's sons are driven to venerate the Empyrean through vile words and unspeakable deeds. Dark rituals undertaken at carefully divined sites of power praise the chaos gods and draw the power of the warp to a world. If you select this objective, keep and exalt the dark gods tally. Add 1 to that tally each time a word bearer's unit from your army successfully completes the following action. So in order to achieve this, you've got to complete an action. Exalt the dark gods. 1 word bearer's infantry unit from your army can start to perform this action at the end of your movement phase if it is wholly within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield. Word bearer's psychic units can attempt to manifest psychic powers while performing this action without this action failing. That's useful. If the unit performing this action is a word bearer's icon, word bearer's dark apostle, or word bearer's master of possession unit, this action is completed at the end of your turn. Otherwise, it is completed at the start of your next command phase. That's fine. I mean, you are going to have those units, so that's not a problem at all. In either case, the action is only completed if the unit performing it is still wholly within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield, and no enemy units, excluding aircraft, are wholly within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield. At the end of the battle, score 2 victory points if your Exalt the Dark Gods tally is 1, score 5 if the tally is 2, score 9 if the tally is 3, score 15 if the tally is 4 or more. It's good. It's good. It's not that difficult to achieve, to be perfectly honest, and you can keep, as long as you have a unit that you can maintain and protect and keep it going, you can really turn the tide as the rounds of the battle rack up. It makes a lot of sense for the word bearers. It's another one of those wonderful secondary objectives that's very characterful and is quite easy to achieve as well. It's not bad. It's not game winning like some of the Thousand Sons ones are, or some of the Alpha Legion ones are, but it's good. I really like that one. Their warlord traits are excellent for the most part. Like, you know, the word bearers, a lot of their focus is on aura abilities, as you would expect. So it's really the stratagems and the warlord traits where they really, really shine. So, number 1, the voice of Lorgar. This warlord speaks with the authority of his Primarch. When he commands, others follow without question or hesitation. Add 3 inches to the range of this warlord's aura abilities, excluding aura abilities that are psychic powers. That's really good. It's really good. 3 inches doesn't sound like much, but it can make the difference between your units getting the aura ability or not, so it's excellent. Each time this warlord chants a prayer or uses an ability in your command phase that specifies a range, until the end of the phase you can add 3 inches to the range of that prayer or ability. Again, excellent. Has particular application for Dark Apostles, obviously, because the word bearers they were the origin of Dark Apostles. The very first Dark Apostles came from the word bearers Legion, and this is just a way of upgrading your Dark Apostles to make them better. It's good. I like this one myself. Number 2, Exalted Possession. This warlord shares his flesh with a particularly powerful demon. Physically stronger and faster than mere mortals, he venerates the Chaos Pantheon with this union. The warlord gains the demon and demonkin keywords if it doesn't have them already. Very good, because that opens them up to an entire range of different aura abilities, psychic benefits, and synergies, basically. It's very good. This warlord has a 4+ invulnerable save against ranged attacks. Excellent. Add 1 to the strength, attacks, and wounds characteristic of this warlord. Add 2 inches to the move characteristic of this warlord. Yeah, it's very, very, very good indeed. You can make some very nasty, nasty, nasty monsters with that one. Number 3, Demonic Whispers. Insidious voices seeping from the Empyrean promise boons to this warlord, but such power must be earned. Each time this warlord chants a prayer that is heard, completes an action or psychic action, or manifests a psychic power, roll 1d6. If the result is greater than the current battle round number, you gain 1 command point. That's superb. That is superb. You're going to want that. You are going to want that Warlord trait. Where command points are at a premium at the moment, and where they're so useful as they are for the word bearers, Demonic Whispers, you are definitely going to take that Warlord trait. Number 4, Master of the Union. This Warlord leads his demonic brethren with fearsome influence, drawing forth the unholy emotions of the corrupted. In your command phase, you can select 1 friendly word bearer's demonkin unit within 6 inches of this Warlord. Until the start of your next command phase, add 1 to the strength characteristic of models in that unit. Each time a model in that unit makes a melee attack, improve the armor penetration characteristic of that attack by 1. So what they're really trying to do with this one, and with a lot of the word bearers army list actually, they are trying to sort of force you into a demonkin role, because the demonkin are really what the word bearers are all about. The demonkin and the cultists are really what it's all about. The base army list is very good for creating a word bearers army, because there's loads of demonkin units, there's loads of cultist units, and that is really what they are all about. They are really quite wonderful, and it's a very good warlord trait in and of itself, because it benefits other units in your army, but it's also very characterful. It's good. Number 5, Diabolist. This warlord etches diabolical incantations into his armour and skin to channel the protection of the warp. Each time an attack is made against this warlord, your opponent cannot re-roll a wound roll. Each time this warlord would lose a wound, roll 1d6 on a 5+, that wound is not lost. It's good. It's not as good as the aura ability ones, because it only benefits the warlord, but it does make them more survivable. Good on a demon prince, that one. Hate-fueled Demagogue. Raw vitriol and inspirational oratory spill from this warlord's cracked lips, irrefutable rhetoric tinged with demonic malice. His commands stoke the hatred in his minions' hearts to incandescent levels. Lovely. In your command phase, you can select 1 friendly word bearers unit within 6 inches of this warlord. Until the start of your next command phase, if that unit is a cultist unit, it gains the Let the Galaxy Burn ability, and models in that unit are considered to have the Heretic Astartes keyword for the purposes of that ability. Very, very nice. Something that you really want if you have a cultist heavy army, this one. Each time a model in that unit makes an attack, if your army is engaged in either wanton destruction or wanton massacre, that unit is considered to be engaged in wanton slaughter for that attack instead. Yeah, it's just a way, if you've got lots of cultist units, it buffs them up. It makes them a little bit beefier. It's good. It's really good, very characterful, and it will surprise your opponent. I mean, cultists are great in this codex. They're just chaff. They're designed to be sacrificial, but there are lots of naughty little tricks you can pull like this one that make them a little bit better, so your opponent is maybe going to ignore them because they're not going to be doing that much damage, and then suddenly you do something like this in combination with other stratagems and psychic powers, and suddenly they start chewing through units they really shouldn't. It's good. It's really good. Stratagems, once again, very good for the word bearers. They actually, you know what? The word bearers are probably one of the most well balanced across the board. Most of the other legions, they have either really good warlord traits or really good stratagems, really good relics, or a really good legion trait, but rarely all of them together. The word bearers are pretty balanced across the board. The relics are good, stratagems are good, warlord traits are good, and the legion trait is good. So yeah, I'm very pleased. I don't know whether you can tell, but I'm very pleased with the way they're represented here. So, stratagems. Cursed Despoilers. The sites the enemy deem valuable must be cast down and despoiled in the name of the dark gods, of course. Only the foolish would stand between the word bearers and their unholy task. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase when a word bearer's core or word bearer's demonkin unit, again, from your army that is engaged in wanton massacre is selected to shoot. Select 1 enemy unit within 12 inches of that unit and enrage an objective marker. Each time Heretic Astartes model in that word bearer's unit makes an attack with a rapid-fire assault or pistol weapon against the enemy unit, an unmodified hit roll of 4 to 5 scores 1 additional hit. Note that combined with Wanton Massacre bonus itself, this means that an unmodified hit roll of 4 plus scores 1 additional hit. Yeah, that's good. It's situational, but it means the units that are camped out on objectives you can really, really, really whittle down. It makes winning the game via claiming objectives or pushing the enemy off them easier. It's good. Fanatic Zealotry. Fervent mortal followers flock to the champions of the Word-Bearers, damning their souls, seeking promises of dark power. Use this stratagem in your command phase. Select one Word-Bearer's cultist unit from your army within 12 inches of a friendly Word-Bearer's character unit. Until the start of your next command phase, you can reroll charge rolls made for that unit. Each time a model in that unit makes a melee attack, you can reroll that attack's hit roll. Again, in context and synergy with Hate-Fueled Demagogue and other benefits, it just buffs your cultists. It's pretty good. Revered Hosts. There is no greater way to venerate chaos than to bond mortal with demon. When battle is joined, the demons within such warriors can burn through their soul, boosting their unholy power. Use this stratagem in the fight phase, when a Word-Bearer's demon unit from your army is selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes a melee attack, you can reroll the wound roll. It's very good for Possessed, obviously, and for other demon units like Demon Princes, Demon Engines, anything like that. It's not bad. It just makes them a bit more killy, and they're killy enough as is, so that's good. Vengeance for Monarchia! Yay! Reference back to the first heretic. Never will the outrage in beloved Monarchia be forgiven. The idols toppled thereby, Guilliman's sons will be reforged from their bones. Oh, by the way, the Ultramarines and the Word-Bearers frigging hate one another. They hate one another. The Word-Bearers destroyed Monarchia. The Word-Bearers destroyed an entire area of Ultramar, of the Ultramar system in return. So, yeah. Use this stratagem in the fight phase when a Word-Bearer's unit from your army is selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time a Heretic Astartes model in the unit makes a melee attack against an Ultramarines unit, or against the unit that is a successor chapter of the Ultramarines, you can reroll the hit roll and you can reroll the wound roll. It's one of those stratagems that's situational role-playing, but if you are fighting against Ultramarines, it's pretty good. Dark Pact. With gruesome offerings and ritualized promises, the Word-Bearers seek the protection of their infernal masters. Use the stratagem in any phase when a Word-Bearer's infantry character model from your army is destroyed. Instead of using any other rules that are triggered when that model is destroyed, you can choose for that model to make a Dark Pact. If you do so, mark that model's position, then remove the model from the battlefield. At the end of the phase, roll 1d6. On a 4+, set that model back up on the battlefield as close as possible to the position you marked, and not within engagement range of any enemy units, with die 3 wounds remaining. Each model can only be selected for this stratagem once per battle. That's interesting. So you can resurrect your characters, the infantry ones anyway. It's a bit like the Hourglass of Manat from the Thousand Sons, but that can be used for any character. This is just for infantry characters, but it's really good. It just means that your characters have a chance of being resurrected if they happen to die. Malevolent Covenant. When the warp provides, a price must always be paid. Use this stratagem in your Psychic phase when a Word-Bearer's Psyker unit from your army fails a Psychic test. You can choose for that Psyker to suffer 1 mortal wound. If you do so, this stratagem costs 1 command point, otherwise it costs 2 command points. In either case, that Psychic test is considered to have been passed at the minimum required warp charge value without a double having been rolled and cannot be denied by any Deny the Witch test. So it's just a way of making sure that your essential power goes off at the right time. If you need it to go off at a particular point in the battle and it will make all the difference, it's good. It's situational, but it is good. Apostle of the Dark Council, I like this one. The leaders of the Word-Bearers guide their legion in matters of faith as much as war. Use this stratagem before the battle when you are mustering your army. If your warlord has the Word-Bearers keyword, select 1 Word-Bearers priest model from your army. Add 1 to the leadership characteristic of the priest model. The priest model gains the following ability, Dark Counsel. Each time this model chants a prayer, you can re-roll the dice to determine if that prayer is heard. That's very good. That's very good. It buffs your Dark Apostle, and you are definitely going to be taking a Dark Apostle, and probably one as your warlord as well. So that just buffs him up. It makes him an uber Dark Apostle. It's good. Hexagrammatic Ward. Diabolical wards of protection can turn aside the enemy's blows. Use this stratagem in any phase when an attack is allocated to a Word-Bearer's model from your army. The damage characteristic of that attack is changed to 0. You can only use this stratagem once unless you are playing a Strike Force or Onslaught battle, in which case you can use the stratagem twice. It's a way of, if a character is like blatted off the board early or is in threat of being blatted off the board early, you can play this one and make sure sure that they're not. It's pretty good, because if you're playing the word bearers, you are going to be relying on the aura abilities of your characters. And if your enemy knows that, they're going to be trying to blat your Dark Apostles from afar, you know? They're going to be trying to get rid of them. So that's a decent enough way of lending them a little bit of strength, a little bit of durability. In terms of relics, they're okay. They're not amazing for the most part, but they are all useful. You've got things like the Eightfold Crozius, which is a Crozius Arcanum that's deeply cursed and is much nastier than the normal one. You've got things like the Crown of the Blasphemer, which is a nice piece of protection for your character. The really interesting ones are things like the Malefic Tome. This unholy book was stitched together from the flayed skins of a dozen mortal psychers, their horror emanating from every inch of its parchment. The tome is inscribed with true names and demonic hierarchies that offer the bearer insights into the powers of the warp. The bearer knows one additional psychic power from one of the disciplines it has access to. Each time the bearer attempts to manifest a psychic power, add one to the psychic test. So you're going to want that. You're going to want that for your Master of Possession, effectively. That has a lot of application in a word bearer's army. It just makes him better. It makes him a beefed up Master of Possession. The Epistle of Lorgar. When a priest reads aloud this hallowed epistle from the Book of Lorgar, the very air turns metallic and the words summon dark blessings from the Immaterium. The bearer knows one additional prayer from the prayers to the dark gods. In your command phase, the bearer is on the battlefield. It can chant one additional prayer it knows that has not already been chanted by a friendly model this turn. So again, in context with Apostle of the Dark Council and some of the warlord traits like Master of the Union, Demonic Whispers, etc., or Voice of Lorgar, it buffs your Dark Apostle. It makes them much, much, much more effective. It's good. It's good. The other stuff, the Armor Diabolus just gives you a bit more protection. It's good. Ashen Axe is a really bizarre piece of work. It's a good weapon, but it also prevents the enemy from falling back. So they're going to have to fight you to the last. It's quite good. The Baleful Icon is interesting. This icon bears an 8-pointed star so saturated in the blood of loyalists that it is forever stained with the taint of treachery. Word-bearers feel its toxic aura much as a sun worshipper feels the kiss of a summer day upon their skin. Those who seek to harm the faithful will instead find their muscles shuddering in revulsion, and even the Adeptus Astartes are drained of their righteous anger in its presence. Word-bearers model only, the bearer has the following ability, a Baleful Icon. When a friendly word-bearer's infantry unit within 6 inches of the bearer, each time a melee attack is made against that unit, your opponent cannot re-roll hit roll, cannot re-roll the wound roll, and cannot re-roll the damage roll. It's quite good. It's like an aura of protection for things. If you've got masses of cultists, it's pretty good, that one. But also it's good for your legionaries as well. It gives them a little bit more divine protection. So yeah, the word bearers, they are easily my favourite Undivided Legion. I love the way they're represented in this book. They are so interesting. They've got so many naughty tricks, and as long as you understand that you are really relying on your characters and your infantry, that's what you're going for. You're going to want cultists, demonkin units, legionaries, and characters with lots of aura abilities to make the most out of the word bearers. And that's very characterful. In fact, talking about it now and looking at this book, I really am feeling it. I really want to make a word bearer's army. I think might be going down that route actually. So that's the Bearers of the Infernal Word. Next time round, I think we're going to have a go at doing the Red Corsairs again, because I feel like I can do it again now. We're also going to have a look at the Codex Chaos Demons at some point very, very soon, my loves. And there will also be appendix videos for each of the Chaos powers and how they're represented in that book. So until then, bye-bye!